We all have our bad days where we want to curl up and, say the the world's screwing me or whatever makes us feel better. And there is some power to that. Sometimes we need to pull back and lick our wounds. But, ultimately we have to realize that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And the suffering part is the choice you have.
We RAD Dads, bringing a soft edge to a hard topic. Join us every week as we talk to real people with real stories, from the everyday single parent to family professionals, and find entertainment along the way. Join me, Walter J. Eggers, as I discover and share wisdom. Positive changes start here.
Featured episode. Hello and welcome back again, Rad Dads. Walter here with you, and I'm feeling amazing. If you don't know, We Rad Dads is your resource for single, separated, divorced, and otherwise non-traditional dads. I am happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. To the new listeners, and for everyone who supported us along the way, I cannot thank you enough for making We Rad Dads what it is. I appreciate you listening, and I aim to bring you value and insight, a little bit of wisdom, and entertainment as well. If you find value, insight, wisdom, and or entertainment, I would appreciate you sharing this episode with your friends and other people who need to hear it. This is a featured episode. I'm on a hiatus right now. The season 1 of We Rad Dads has just come to a close, but I'm not going to leave you high and dry. This featured episode is now being rebroadcast from our archives. It's something that I found value in, and I hope you do too. Now, if you don't know, in episode 52, I highlighted the need to take a hiatus, reset, and restructure for We Rad Dads Season 2, which will launch in February 2017. In the meantime, I wanted to bring you something amazing. Speaking of value, if you don't know, quick links are available on the iTunes player. If you tap on the album art, the colorful We Rad Dads banner, on the iTunes player, it will uncover a short show notes section. And in those show notes, you'll have several links of things like our resources page, which has been redeveloped and features several podcasts and other resources that you may find helpful, like Amazon affiliates, which I would appreciate you using. Very simple to do, as a matter of fact. If you're going to buy anything on Amazon, go through the quick links there or on our show notes page and any page at www.weraddads.com. And what that does is allow you to make your purchase through Amazon and for We Rad Dads to collect a very small percentage of your purchase, which would normally go to Amazon. This is an excellent way to support our show and We Rad Dads without costing you a penny extra. Also featured in our resources page is our Audible trial. That's right. Go to audibletrial.com/WeRadDad or click on the quick links to get signed up for a free 30-day trial of audible.com. And not only that, you get a free book to boot. A new addition to the quick links is the episode 0. That's the origins of We Rad Dads. If you're new, this is for you. Okay, I didn't mean to rhyme that, but it works. Listen, if you want to know what We Rad Dads is all about and how I started and what we're headed towards, episode 0 is for you. It's a must listen. Go on over to the quick links, click on the link, and get started on that episode too. And now, to draw everything together, I've created a resource and a place for us to be and have conversations that we can't have elsewhere. It's a private Facebook group for We Rad Dads only. Join us. We're having amazing conversations over there, and we're helping guys left and right. The We Rad Dads that have joined are an amazing group of gentlemen, and I'm proud to be there right with you. So come on over and join us on the We Rad Dads Facebook group. During this hiatus, I'm looking forward to creating more resources, like the 7 Essentials download you will find if you go to the We Rad Dads home base at www.weraddads.com. This is a list of 7 essential things you need to do when becoming a single parent. I hope your new year is going great, and I hope to set the stage for a fantastic 2017. It's time to move yourself forward, and I'm right there with you. Now, without further ado, let's get to this week's featured episode. Hello and welcome back again, Rad Dads. Walter Eggers, charged and ready to tackle the day, the week the month, the year, fill in the blank. Today I have with us an amazing guy, somebody who I've turned to personally, and he's really helped me out through some multiple hard times. And he's the guy with the experience to boot. Please help me welcome Paul Gilbride of Trickle Down Happiness. Paul is a father of 2 daughters, a divorced dad, and spent a significant portion as a stay-at-home dad. I'm sure you can recognize a little bit of the discomfort involved with that. Paul, thank you so much for being with me here today.
Oh, it is so awesome to be here, Walter. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. You know, the pre-conversation, we just started diving into all these really awesome topics, and it's just really awesome to see someone who I know more or less personally at this point see kind of proliferate and just kind of grow and get into the men's space as we are and help other guys and put those pieces together, make the connections to help other guys and reach out. So, man, thank you for doing that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is what I do. Share our story. There's always guys out there that it'll resonate with, and I'm just happy to be on your show and have a chance to do that.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for being here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Now, you're also a member of the ILA, the Integrated Life Advocate. Is it an association, or what's going on with ILA?
Yeah, the ILA is part of a nonprofit called Third Path, which is based out of Philadelphia. They are a advocacy group for work-life integration, and so they work with people individually on helping them troubleshoot juggling 2 careers with a family, or coming up with different ways to manage their careers where maybe one might go on a flex schedule. And it's really all about helping people live that kind of life that we're all trying to live. And that's that integrated life where we're happy with our careers and with our family and so forth. And so they also work with corporations, and they will get involved in legislation. For example, things like legislation around more time off for fathers when they have families and when they have new kids. And so they have some kind of think tank groups. One of them is called the ILA, which is the Integrated Life Advocacy Group. And I've been a member of that for about 3 years. And it's a great complement to what I do, which is coaching people around work-life integration. So, yeah, it's a great.
Uh-oh. I think we lost you here for a second. Are you still there?
I am here.
Okay. Yeah. No, you said work-life integration, and it's a group. That's where you cut off there. Sorry.
So they are my background, and what I coach on is work-life integration. So it's a wonderful organization for me to be involved with. I learned so much about what the latest trends are and what people are struggling with, and how that changes generationally. I mean, millennials don't struggle with the same stuff people like my generation do, and it's just a great organization to keep up to date on what people are struggling with when they're trying to live that life of having it all.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we draw on our experiences as we perceive them at the time, given the technology and the world around us, and it is a dynamically changing environment. So I'm glad you identified that, and furthermore, that there are other people out there recognizing that, and adjusting course to accommodate. I was going to say you're also involved with a corporation, is a consulting firm called Life Meets Work as well. And that's very similar in the lines that you do leadership and coaching for anything from the family to the corporate environment.
Yeah, Life Meets Work is a great organization, and they are a profit organization, but they really focus on helping corporate America develop programs and develop ways to create a better working and balanced life for their employees. And that, the millennial generation is really kind of driving corporate America now with, they're not going to buy into some of the old legacy environments or cultures that our generation might have been used to in corporate America, where it was, you worked 70-hour weeks, and a lot of that was predominantly the man who did it. And now millennials want a much more balanced life. They realize there's much more to life than just work. And so companies are looking for consulting firms like Life Meets Work to help them develop programs that create more of a balanced life for their employees. And that could be anywhere from developing flex time to work share to having more training for their managers on how to manage people who want more work-life balance or who are going to be new parents. And so my role with them is I work as one of their coaches and work with a lot of people who are going to be new parents especially, and help them prepare for what life is going to be like now that you add that whole new responsibility, and help them create a life that, that is meaningful for them, and that they can still maintain their career, but really feel like they are also maintaining what they want out of the relationship with their spouse and now with their child. So it's really super gratifying work. And it's a great company that is just growing amazingly quickly because of the demand in corporate America for this type of service.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think corporations and myself are completely disenchanted with the whip cracking superiors who may or may not have families of their own. And the ones that are worst obviously are either the completely disconnected parent, mother or father, or the people who don't have children at all and literally their life is work. And work is important. It's good to have purpose, but my purpose is shared between my family and what my occupation is.
Yeah, and that's why I really shy away from the term work-life balance, because that intellectually puts him on two separate ends of the spectrum. And I think it subconsciously limits us with how we think about that and how we approach creating that, what I like to call is integration, because work and life, they're not two things to be put on opposite ends of the teeter-totter. They are, work is part of our life. And so it's really about the integration and defining what is it you want out of your career, and what is it you want from your family, and how do you want to be remembered by your kids. And then you find an integration that allows you to have all of that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I hadn't considered before. I often am guilty of saying the term balance when it comes to that. And I didn't realize that now that you mention, I totally recognize it does. It throws them on opposite ends of the spectrum, and they should be, like you say, integrated, like interlocked fingers. It should be very close and associated with one another in every way possible.
Yeah, I agree. And just think of the term balance. And when people say work-life balance, it's almost defining your life. You're going to work, say, 40 hours a week, minimal. And so what are you implying? That 40 hours of every week is not part of your life? That it creates a big rift there and a space where it doesn't put you in a mindset of being able to really identify what it is you want out of your life and then integrating that. It creates this either or, and I think that's where people get tripped up, is with either or thinking rather than how do I make all of this work and really be satisfied and fulfilled with what I'm doing in all areas of my life.
Yeah, that's the biggest cause of worry for me. And I'm kind of a worrier when it comes down to that sort of stuff trying to make sure the healthy mix is there, or what lies ahead and that sort of thing. So yeah, awesome. It sounds like your involvement with these, agencies and your own business are perpetuating the questions of, hey, can we do this thing better? Can we, how do we make this stuff work, instead of saying, put your foot down and that's the way it is. So that's great. Thank you for your involvement with that. And, I'll have, obviously, Rad Dads, I'll have all the links to this stuff, on the show notes page, which will be www.weraddads.com, Paul Gilbride. That's Gilbride. Now, Paul, awesome. We got off to a great start here, and let's just get to know you personally. So we kind of get you a snapshot of who you are today professionally, but who are you, Paul? Tell us really quickly a snapshot of who you are today as a dad, as a divorced man at this point, etc.
Wow. Well, I'm a guy with a lot of experience, especially when it comes to being a father and work life and all that. I have lived almost every aspect of work life integration and being a father that you can. So when I had my kids are now 18 and 16. When they were 3 and 5, up to that point, my wife and I both worked. So I was the dad who was trying to balance a career and had a spouse with a career and trying to be a good dad and not, under all the stress that people in that situation are. Feeling like I'm not a good dad, I'm not a good employee, I'm not really good at anything.
Yeah, trying to show up everywhere and you end up showing nowhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And we all know how crappy of a feeling that is. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So I actually did, or my ex-wife and I decided at the time something's got to give, and I quit my job. And our plan was, I'll stay home for a year. We'll figure out how to make this work. We just felt like we weren't raising our kids the way we wanted to. So the plan was for me to stay home with my kids for a year. Well, that turned into 12 years, which was amazing. It was very challenging, from a lot of different aspects. It was not, I guess it was getting to the point where there was more normalization around the man staying home, but still there was a big stigma around that. Just the challenge of being a stay-at-home, whether you're male or female, especially after having a 15-year career. It's a whole different lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
But it was an amazing opportunity for me because I took that time not only to really bond with my kids and become a better father, but I also really discovered why I was put on this earth. And that's because my background is I'm a recovering CPA. I spent 15 years in corporate America up until I quit my job. And I really discovered that what I love to do is help people, connect with people. I really got into the psychology around what makes us tick and what holds us back. And I really felt like I had a natural ability to help people get the best out of themselves. And so I kind of just stumbled onto coaching as my avenue to do that. And I got certified in coaching and opened my practice little over 4 years ago. And so in that time, then I became also an entrepreneur and a father. So now I've been two-career father to a stay-at-home father to now an entrepreneur father. And now my wife and I have parted ways after 34 years. And that is recently. I just got divorced a couple months ago. Now I am a father who is trying to balance a separated family and still, be on board with co-parenting, even though we don't live in the same household. So I feel like my experience, especially as a father, has touched almost every different aspect other than just being a single father. So yeah, that's kind of who I am and how I got to where I am today.
Well, it's pretty obvious to me, Paul, that you have the life experience, the education, and you've forged ahead. What was it? At 12 years, a stay-at-home dad? I mean, nothing in life can prepare you for life itself than being a dad. And then you have those obstacles in the way. You go the unconventional route of being a stay-at-home dad, leaving a corporate job, probably one with a good upward potential, and more or less that fear associated with, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be relevant, I'm not working. Well, it's not true, because in my opinion, being a dad, it'll garner skills that the workplace will never afford you. Patience and dedication and identifying what's truly important and time management. Like, all these things are extremely valuable. And unfortunately, this may be something you want to take to the Life Meets Work or ILA, but those skills actually started listing those on resumes and on job applications, and they are just not valued at all.
No, you're right. Think of the skills. Think of the skills you develop as a father, and especially I think of staying at home. I really was forced to learn patience. I was I was forced to learn. I really had to let go of having a plan. So you would hit on, when you give up your career to stay at home, that there's this anxiety about staying relevant and everything. And the way I ended up, and that was a huge anxiety for me. And the way I ended up handling it, and part of it was through my own personal growth and why I even drifted towards coaching, is really to embrace the concept that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, and open my mind up to what the opportunities that were in front of me, and just what the universe was putting in front of me, rather than having this predetermined notion of what I should be and where I should be. And when you start changing your thought process to just being open to what is being put in front of you and why, it changes everything. I never would have gone down the path of coaching had I really stayed in that mindset of being so anxious about maintaining my CPA or all the things that I identified with myself. If I had stayed in that mindset, I'd never be where I am today. And quite frankly, from a career perspective, this is what I was meant to do. I've never been happier in my life, and I don't even look at my life from a perspective of work-life integration anymore, because I don't consider what I do work. I consider what I do what I was put on this earth to do.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, and I just, I never would have got there had I not let go of what I thought should be or what I was anxious about, and just opened myself up to, what's the world telling me?
You just drilled so many key concepts, the mindset involved, identifying who you are with your job title. These are huge, huge concepts, Rad Dad. So make sure that you take nothing else away. If you take nothing else away, it's these simple things. It's that you are in control of your destiny. You said this right here, and that's the episode tag. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Gentlemen and ladies listening, this is your mantra. This is what you need to say to yourself every single morning. Every single time you feel that life is coming down on you, that's what you say. Life is about mindset hacks. And Paul, I'm really glad you shared that. It's the beginning. It's a corner. And here's the thing is, once you made that mindset shift, it turned the corner on your entire life to where now you said, and I quote, I don't feel like I work because I enjoy what I do. Was there any even possible notion of this reality that you're living now, back in the day when you were questioning leaving being a CPA?
No, I mean, I didn't even know coaching existed. I mean, and there really wasn't. I guess the first really well-known coach was Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. And back when he started, we didn't even identify him as a coach. We identified him as a motivational speaker, which he was as well. But, no, absolutely not. Other than I always felt a nagging, I don't know, something inside me that told me I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, and that I always felt like I could have a big impact on the world, and I had no idea how I was going to do that. But that always nagged at me, and being a CPA, at least for me, I knew that was not my avenue. That's not the way I wanted to touch people through that profession. So, but I had, other than just that nagging feeling, I had no clue of, why I was put on this earth. And I go back to, one of my favorite quotes, and I don't even know who said this. And it's one of my favorite, because now I have actually gotten to a point in my life where I've been able to realize both of these, is that the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you discover why. And when I discovered why I was born, everything it became so much clearer to me. And even to the point of things you fear, you're able to let go of some of the fear of just pursuing what feels so right, and helping people and coaching people to be to get the most out of themselves, it just feels so right to me. So, yeah, I never knew what it was going to be. I just knew that there was something, that I had a gift, which I believe everyone does. And man, the day you discover what that gift is, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. It's, you got to start wondering, ask yourself questions when you're asking yourself questions. Why are you so angry? Why are you so upset? Are you not rested? Are you not comfortable with what you're doing? And it's because exactly what you're saying, Paul. Maybe you're meant for something else, and you got to embrace your current situation. You got to understand everything is happening for a reason, and you got to learn those lessons. Find those very, very, if infinitesimal, small silver linings on your situation. And I think we can all identify there's been some really dark, gigantic black clouds. But even in those, there's always something to take away, and you need to start focusing on that stuff. And I know there's science behind this, but actually you build neural pathways to seeing the positive in almost any situation. I'm actually reaping the benefits of this now. I'm only just beginning, and it's an amazing journey. Me personally, my last year mostly, how much of a change that I've been able to make in my own mindset. And, yeah, it's great to hear the more or less success story of, you being able to embrace that and then really find and work within your passions.
Yeah. I like that you brought up mindset again, because one of the critical mindset changes I made, was to start thinking, what if everything that happened around me, or everything that was that I would characterize as happening to me, was happening for me? And what if I developed a mindset that everything that was going on around me was meant to go on around me, and that it was really everything I needed to become the person I wanted to be? Now, when I tell people that, they'll say, well, that's just crazy, and that, I can't think that way or whatever. And I always go back to, we don't know that's the case. I mean, we have no idea to know that there's a greater power in the universe that is leading us all in some direction, and we either choose to listen to it or we don't. That's a belief system. We don't know that for sure. But I also don't know that that's not true. And so if I have the choice of believing it's true and believing it's not true, I am a much more powerful person believing that is true. Because if I don't know either way if it's true or false, I'll take the position of, the world is out in my best interest, and everything that happens to me is happening for me. And if I approach everything with that mentality, which I've developed over the years, it's so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And it's really just a choice. You don't know what's the truth one way or the other. But if you make it your truth, holy crap. I mean, it becomes the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that mindset alone has allowed me to get through some really, really tough times.
Oh, yeah. Don't I know it? And I've employed the same tactic, not always successfully, I might add. But when it comes down to shifting your perspective from what's happening to me to what it is that's happening for me in my life, you're describing the very essence of the victim mentality. And it's something that maybe, there's people out there who don't quite understand the victim mentality because you're in it. I was in it. And I was talking to Paul, and he says, oh yeah, that's a victim mentality. And I'll tell you what, when somebody told me that I was acting like a victim, it was like, basically, it took me back to junior high school, and you're being a pansy and this, that, and you get defensive immediately. But once I really kind of absorbed that and thought, okay, well, Paul's only got my best interest in mind. Much like myself, Rad Dads, I have your best interest in mind. This is why I have a podcast, so you can listen discreetly, and we can challenge each other this way. So I can ask you the more or less tough questions, or you can ask yourself, question, are you approaching life as a victim? And if you are, make those changes. I mean, I'm really loving where this is going, because that right there is a really crux moment to recognition, which is something I also talk a lot about when it comes to just seeing exactly clearly where you are, not through the rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, and it's the victim mentality is, that's tough. It's easy, and I still get into the victim mentality. I think it's something that it's okay to be there. But it's recognizing that you're there and asking yourself the tough questions of why you're there, and then how long you stay there. We all have our bad days where we want to curl up and say the world's screwing me or whatever makes us feel better. And there is some power to that. Sometimes we need to pull back and lick our wounds, but ultimately we have to realize that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And the suffering part is the choice you have. And again, things are going to happen that are going to put you in that place, but you have to rise up and realize that ultimately it probably happened for your benefit, and you start asking yourself powerful questions like, what can I learn from this? And then you start taking action, and then you have more control, and you're not a victim anymore. Ultimately you're not a victim. I don't know if any of your listeners or you have ever read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was, in a concentration camp and spent all his time helping others around him, and, had the quote, I don't know exactly what the quote is word for word, but it ultimately it was, people can take everything away from you except for, your power to act and to how you view your situation. And if someone like that, in those conditions, can embrace a concept like that, I think it's within all of us to be able to embrace that. And it's practice. We're not used to doing it, and like anything else, it just takes practice. But it'll change your life,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Practice. And it's, you're going to get hammered down at first, but eventually when you turn that corner on the thing, you'll start reaping those rewards. You'll be a happier person. You'll inspire other people around you to be happy. People will wonder what kind of drugs you're taking, but you're not. If it's one of those things that it's a chemical thing in your brain that will change, and you'll develop those neural pathways. I love this quote. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. I love that. That's just a quintessential mindset quote. But the book, Man's Search for Meaning, I've actually heard of this a couple different times, and I will have a link to the book actually on the We Rad Dads show notes page for your episode. And also, I want to take this moment to actually kind of tell everyone again that We Rad Dads is an affiliate for Audible. And Audible is a great way to get your books right into your ear holes without having to read. You can listen on the way to work, that sort of thing. Just go to audibletrial.com/WeRadDads to start your free trial. You get a free book, and this could be one of them. A 30-day trial and a free book. I mean, hey, it's free. Back to that whole mindset hack that you're talking about. In that situation, being in a prison camp, I believe Nelson Mandela had a very similar either memoir or very famous quote regarding that same situation where people can take everything away from you except for your mind, your mindset and your experiences.
Yeah. And it's so hard for us to embrace that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But again, I think it's only because we haven't practiced it. And none of us, some of these concepts weren't introduced to me until I was 35 or 40 years old. Well, I've got 35 or 40 years of, like you said, neural pathways that have dug themselves in pretty deep. Mm-hmm. And so, you can hear something and it makes a lot of sense, but it takes practice. And to change those neural pathways, you have to dig new ones. And I think that's where people sometimes don't give themselves enough slack that, hey, this all makes sense and why can't I live this way? Well, it takes time. Just keep trying and keep pounding and keep finding ways to educate yourself and to embrace these concepts, and eventually they will start taking over and becoming second nature, and that's when your life changes forever. And I've done it. I've seen it in clients, and it's just amazing of what, your mind can make a hell of heaven or a heaven of hell. And it's just it's that simple. But but then again, it's not, because we want it right away, but it takes practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to touch on a few things that kind of resonate with me personally, but what you just kind of went over there. And you talked about coming upon have been introduced to these concepts early on in life, but as of 35, 40 years of age, what people would call middle age. I don't know if that's true or not, but when you finally realize, like, oh, hey, this has value, this has worth, this has merit. I often found myself saying, well, my life's over. For a lot of different reasons. My life is over. My marriage is over. My son will never have a life that I want. Blank, blank, blank. My life is over. And the reality is, if you are in fact in your midlife, just think about all the life you have left. Don't give up with that. If change you seek, change you must, right? So the other part of that is, if you feel old and this, that, and the other thing, just remember, it's a famous Chinese proverb, and I've said it here before, and I really try and live by this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that is embracing that concept of you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yep.
Everything that has happened in your life has led you to this moment, and now it's your choice of how you want to move forward with the information you have. So no, it's never too late to become a better person. I mean, I think that's what we're all striving for on a day-by-day basis, is just to be a better version of who we were yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have heard me say it, make your tomorrows better than your yesterdays. I mean, just better, and not by leaps and bounds, just maybe even a millimeter or just a very fractional amount, but just make it better. And eventually that distance, that effort will add up. That's awesome. Thank you. I want to dive into, Paul, your experiences. I ask everybody about their bomb crater and the associated struggle. Can you identify a point in time where your life exploded and these changes were, quote, bestowed upon you, where they manifested and your life exploded? And can you go over that with us real quick? Do you have a story about that?
Oh, absolutely. So, I've been a coach for about 4.5 years, and in retrospect now, I learned a lot of different things about mindset and things that you and I have discussed in the last 30 minutes. The universe challenged me to put it into action a year ago. So it's been actually it was August 28th of last year. So, I think this will be airing right around that time, probably within 5 days.
Yeah.
But I hit what I guess I would call my rock bottom almost exactly a year ago, where due to a number of things, I had a son who was diagnosed with severe depression. A lot of working with him and the stress related to that fell on me, because my ex-wife was doing a lot of traveling and she wasn't around, and it really took its toll on me to watch my son go through that. It was, everything associated with severe depression for a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. It was not knowing if he was going to hurt himself, sleeping on his bedroom floor, just a ton of stress. And then I had some of my own physical things that played into. I had a really super low testosterone level that was throwing my mood off. And the bottom line is, almost exactly a year ago to this day, I had to check myself into a inpatient facility in Arizona to be treated for, among other things, a mood disorder at the time. And I really felt like if I didn't do that, I was either not going to be around or my marriage was going to fall apart. And my marriage was already struggling because of how I was struggling. And so I ended up in this facility for 6 weeks, probably the toughest 6 weeks of my life, because it was, it was a reality I wasn't prepared for. I got there and they strip you down and they search you and they take your phone and you are cut off from society.
Wow.
And I was there with, people struggling with drug addiction, to sex addiction, to severe depression, to PTSD, and everything in between. And my second day there, the guy in the room next to me committed suicide while I was in my room. And, at that moment, I didn't know what I had gotten myself into. I didn't know what I had become. All my training and everything was being put to the ultimate test. 3 days later, so I've been in there maybe 5 days, I get a call that my dad died. And so it was another defining moment for me. I had to decide, am I going to give up what I know I have to do for myself to go back and, deal with my dad's funeral and everything? And I decided that I would go to his funeral, but I would come right back. And so I took 36 hours to fly back to Wisconsin for his funeral. I literally had to leave his funeral as they were saying the closing prayer to get back on a plane and go back and finish what I started. And I ended up there for 6 weeks, and I came back. I learned a ton about myself. But I was still struggling when I came back, because it's very hard to go to a facility like that and then kind of get dumped back into society, because I was for 24 hours a day, I was in group therapy and individual therapy and equine therapy and massages and acupuncture and you name it. It was very all inclusive. But what I learned there, holy crap. The people that I met there, these were all very high functioning people in society, people you would never, if you met out in the real world, would have known that they struggled with anything. I mean, they were high profile attorneys and educators, a lot of young kids who were, at schools like Harvard. And it just, what it struck me is that pretty much, I think anybody in the world could probably do 6 weeks in a place like that to learn about themselves and just to get some perspective on life. And so, I came back, and unfortunately my ex-wife now, who at the time we had been together 34 years, she was done. So my struggles over the last that 2-year period had just taken its toll, and I spent like 4 or 5 months really hanging on to that relationship, knowing that ultimately her heart wasn't in it. And the most defining moment of my life, and this is going to sound crazy, was December 13th of last year. I was in a Starbucks writing a blog, and it was about 5:30 in the morning, and a woman walked in, and she smiled at me, and it was like a smile that it was like she looked right through me. And that moment, I realized that I was going to be okay. And I went home and I told my wife, don't worry about me. If this isn't right for you, you need to do what you got to do, and I'm going to be fine. And that kind of gave her the permission to get out of the marriage, which I think is what she ultimately wanted. But it was also a way for me to let go and realized that I was going to be okay. And that smile to this day has really changed my life. And I have since, gotten divorced. We stay on great terms. I'm very proud of the way we've co-parented and how we've handled it with our kids and how we've maintained our relationship. And I learned so much about myself and all the things that I had tried to apply in the last 10 years of my life when I became a life coach and helped other people. And it's given me a perspective now. And I guess I'll circle back on this mentality of everything that happens in your life happens for you and not to you. I could never be the successful coach I am today without having gone through that horrific couple years in my life, and just to gain the empathy and to really be forced to practice what I preach and to see how it can get you through even the toughest of times. And, I'm just so grateful for those lessons. I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemy, but, I would never be the person I am today without having gone through that, that crater moment, as you call it.
Oh, yeah.
Life, so.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing your story. And I know every one of us has had a struggle that has been, it's funny because it's layered. There's so many elements to it. And it seems like the more energy you put into it, another thing either falls through the cracks or is damaged or it removes itself from the equation. And I know that feeling of loss, that feeling of wonder, that, everything associated with the fear, the stress, the strain on the relationships, the not knowing, the wondering. And you pretty much summed it up. Extraordinary challenges produce exemplary people. And that's exactly what your story has provided you with, is the foundations to become the person you're becoming. You haven't even arrived yet. You're just starting out. And your start is amazing because you've catapulted. It's like a slingshot effect. And I've heard this before. I don't want to take full credit for this, but your life is dragging you back to the point where you can't be stretched anymore. But eventually, when you release all of that negativity, when you release your ties, when you decide that it's okay to move forward, you are then propelled forward at an incredible rate. And it just takes your mindset shift. It takes the acceptance to know that you are, in fact, right where you need to be. Thank you so much for that. I want to draw a couple of also not conclusions, but point out a few things that you said that this was recent. Often when I think of people who are then teaching and showing us the lessons of life, they're, 10, 15, 20, a lifetime of years out from the event, and they've been able to process it. And you've been able to do this in a year's time. And you're not the first person. My bomb crater, I think actually it was more of a minefield, but still, I think the last big hit was about a year ago, and I could have easily gone down that path myself. So it's funny. I've talked to other people. Cameron Bahan, he's still going through it, and it's been a year, and he's moving forward in the best way possible. It's absolutely possible, guys. That's exactly why I do what I do, is to get us all through it in the shortest amount of time, but not glossing over the lessons, learning what we need to learn along the way, but then putting ourselves forward and slingshotting ourselves exactly where we need to be quicker instead of dwelling in it in a lifetime.
Yeah. And I'm very fortunate. I had the mindset and the training and by the grace of God or whatever, the universe or whatever you believe in, I was able to access that training and that mindset when I needed it the most. And that's why I think I was able to gain perspective and turn it around relatively quickly. And I realize everybody's on their own journey and it can take a lot longer for other people. And I still have my days, don't get me wrong. And I think you put it best. We're always growing, and I'm the person I am now, but I know I can be so much more, and that also gives me perspective of knowing that you know what, no matter what life throws at me, I do have the tools and the capability to find whatever lesson lies in there to make me a better person. And, you know, that's just how I'm going to move forward with my life. And you also brought up, you brought up the concept of acceptance and letting go. And it's funny because someone asked, I think it was actually in a coaching closed group that I'm in on Facebook. This morning, someone asked the question, what's the difference between letting go and avoiding? And to me, the difference is the same as becoming a butterfly versus staying in the chrysalis the rest of your life. If you think of a butterfly, if you cut it out of its cocoon, it will die because it needs that struggle to become what it's meant to become, and that's a butterfly. And I always try to remind myself of that when I'm in a deep struggle of that. This has to happen for me to take the next step and to become the butterfly. And I just think that's just that. I think that is just a amazing analogy for me and for a lot of people to visualize and realize that you can't become what you're meant to become unless you have some struggle around that to teach you what you need to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's got their own timeline. You know, when it comes down to that, how long you stay in that chrysalis is completely dependent on yourself, your personal makeup, your situation. And I'm not going to infer that it should take a year to turn your life around. Some people, it'll probably take less time. I think a lot of us, it'll probably take more than that. And that's okay. You just have to understand, again, with recognition, where you're at, what you're doing, and how you're going about it. I think really the difference for me, if you were to pose that question to me, is recognition. What's the difference between, what was it again, facing, the question? What was the question again, Paul? The one that you asked? I had an answer for it. I just can't get my fingers on the actual question here.
You mean the one on the Facebook?
Right, yeah.
The difference between letting go and avoiding.
Letting go and avoiding. Thank you. I think for me personally, if I were to answer that one, would be, the difference would be letting go is a conscious decision. It takes action. It takes thoughtful action. Whereas avoiding, I think we all can understand, we just ignore and turn away from it. So face it and take action would be the biggest difference between those two things for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, it's a simple visual too. I mean, if you're carrying a 50-pound weight and you're running a marathon, what's easier? Letting go of that weight or trying to avoid it but still carrying it. I mean, you know, the visual alone of just letting go versus avoiding is pretty simple of what the benefit is, but it's not easy to do. And until I let go of my marriage, I really struggled. But until I let go, and when I let go is when everything, you know, started to change for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your personal story with everyone. And I know that we're going to get a lot of value out of it, Rad Dads out there. I want you to reach out and let Paul know about what his story and what, you know, this episode means to you. Whether it be on Facebook or any of the email channels on trickledownhappiness.com. Make sure I got that URL right.
That's right. Yep.
All right, cool. And any of the other channels as well. You know, I really want to kind of wrap this up with some of the stuff we started talking about. You know, it seemed like, and I'll tie this together with where I'm going, but where we were was, you know, when you gave your wife permission to leave, from your story, it didn't sound like you wanted to give her that permission.
No, you know, and that was all part of the letting go. I mean, I think when I got that smile and that Starbucks and it kind of opened me up to feeling like I needed to let go. Yeah, I mean, before that, no, I didn't want to give her permission. And I realized, and I was being very victim focused. when I had the realization of letting go, it changed my victim focus to outwardly to her and what she probably had gone through over the last couple of years, and maybe what her journey was, and that it's not always about us and people rejecting us or whatever the stories we tell ourselves. When I was able to kind of get into her space and how she might be feeling and why she was holding on, she was probably, I just come out of a facility for 6 weeks. This was about 4 months later, but she still loved me and was worried about me. And I think part of why she didn't want to let go is she just didn't know if I was okay enough to, to have that happen. And when I realized and put myself in her shoes, I realized that the best thing I could do for her was to say, don't worry about me. I'm going to be okay. You need to do what you got to do. And
absolutely.
I'll survive,
I think that recognition for both of you, I think you needed to hear that phrase as much as you needed to tell her that. I think that recognition needs to be made as well, to not do things specifically for other people, but to recognize their importance in that situation, and then make that decision for you. And it sounds like you did both.
Yeah, it all became clear when I was willing to let go, because it's when we hold on to the image of what we think should be. And again, it goes back to that whole mentality of, are things happening to you or happening for you? And, when I was able to let go, it also transitioned me back into the mindset of things are happening for me. And, then that changes everything. And you realize that everything comes clear, that you have to do this not only for her, but for yourself. It's really what is best.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to ask you, it's been such a short time, and your family is a little bit older, but how do you make co-parenting work?
Communication is by far the key. So, my wife and I really try to communicate what we see when the kids are with us. We always try to make sure that we are a united front. So any decisions that need to be made with respect to our kids, we discuss between ourselves, and then whoever is going to communicate that decision to the kids, that it is echoed by the other person, when they're with me or with her. And, the communication and the ability to just find common ground with how you want to parent is critical. And I realize that we have my ex-wife and I do have a very good relationship, and that's helpful. I know it can be very difficult if you get divorced and there's a lot of animosity and a lot of baggage with that, that it's much harder to rise above that and do what's best for your kids. But I think it's communication, and it's being able to put everything else aside and just focus on what is best for them. How do we want to do this? Come to an agreement, be consistent, and also show them that we still, to some degree, are a family. She is still your mother, and I'm still your father. And with respect to our family, this is the way it's going to be, and we're going to be united in that. And so, that's how we've made it work. And knock on wood, it's gone very well so far.
Yeah, that's really key. And I think it's a very solid foundation for the kids to know that no matter what, even in different households, mom and dad are still not only parental units, as far as a designation, but they are actually operating as a team to help the entire family. And that's I did the same thing.
Yeah, and it's even little things like my daughter is a dancer, and she dances for her high school dance team, and they dance at halftime of football games, for example. They also compete, but with other schools. But, just having my daughter be able to look in the stands and see my ex-wife and I sitting next to each other, because we're there for her.
Yeah.
And so if she can see us sitting next to each other and realize that, it's very symbolic for her that we're still, when it comes to being her parents, we are still together on that. And those are the little things that I think your kids see, that make the difference when you try to co-parent. They have to see signs, even the little signs, that you still are a cohesive unit when it comes to being their parent.
Nice. And it sounds like it all starts with communication, professional communication at first to kind of break the ice and make sure that everyone's heart is in the right place. Patience is involved. You're not saying something that you're going to regret later. I mean, that's the foundations of this eventual communication and family. I mean, that's what I call it, my family unit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It all starts with communication and a focus. I think the focus is if you're in a divorce that is, or you've been divorced and there's a lot of animosity, it takes a lot of focus to put those personal things aside for your kids. But you have to find a way to focus and put all that stuff on the back burner and realize that what's best for your kids is a united front and parents that are on the same page. And it's very difficult, but that focus is really what you need after the communication.
Absolutely. Put first what matters most, Rad Dads, and then everything else will fall in. Awesome. Thank you, Paul. I got a kind of quick Q&A segment here. Got about 3 or 4 questions and we'll call it. So, I guess before we get there, if you were talking to somebody in your exact situation, if you could teleport back to yourself at your rock bottom moment, give yourself, a helpful coaching piece of advice, a very succinct, thing to do, actionable step, book, what would that be? What would it have been?
It really would be to go back to something I've harped on a couple times, that 2 things. One is the mantra of I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The other is you really got to practice self-love, because it is easy to take a bad moment in your life and get buried in shame and really pile on yourself. And when you do that, it becomes that much more difficult to dig out. So, and when I talk about shame, it's the different, guilt and shame are often thrown into the same category, but they're drastically different. You can feel guilty about things you've done and say, I wish I hadn't done that, or that was a bad thing for me to do. But shame takes it to the level of I am a bad person. And I think sometimes at our lowest point, we can really ourselves with shame, and that makes it so much more difficult to dig out. So you just have to A, believe you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and B, don't give up on yourself as a good person, and try to love yourself through those moments, because it's going to take self-love to get you out of there and start when you're at your lowest, because you are not a bad person. It's all part of your journey. And if you start thinking you are, man, it just makes it that much more difficult. And so I would say self-love is critical.
Excellent. That's an awesome tip and tactic for anybody listening who's either going through it, have gone through it, because as we discussed earlier, life's dynamic, and there will be ups, there will be downs, there will be peaks, there will be valleys, and we'll probably end up having to rely on that tactic in the future. I can almost guarantee. So thank you for sharing. Okay, very briefly here, what is your best dad skill or superpower?
Um, I definitely my sense of humor. I've been able to use that to diffuse a lot of tense situations and normalize things for my kids. And I would absolutely say my sense of humor.
Nice. I kind of glossed over one of our earlier questions, but I want to bring it up now since sense of humor is your strength. I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is one of those things, either a pop culture thing, something that just makes you smile, makes you happy? For me, I'm a big movie buff, so generally speaking, any of the classic dumb movies, the guy movies always does it for me. So is there one go-to for you?
My one of my favorite movies all time is a comedy. I don't know if you ever saw Best in Show about it's a parody on the Big Dog Show in New York.
I've heard of it. I've not seen it, but I've heard it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so well done. And it's so much my sense of humor. So that would by far be my go-to movie to really tickle my own sense of humor.
Nice. Yeah, no, in the worst of it, I know I need to laugh, even though I'm hurting, something like that. And it may be kind of a distraction, but at the same time, there's something to be said for, making yourself smile. And you mentioned this earlier when it comes to the woman in Starbucks, that power of a smile. It's funny, I want to jump onto a tangent here real briefly and allow me that, please. Where, I don't know who it was someone I heard in a podcast actually talk about sitting in a place, a coffee shop, for example, and smiling for the 10 minutes at everybody who came in and how that kind of affected the entire environment, and then taking the next minutes and just looking at them without smiling, just a blank stare or even maybe possibly a negative, and how that affected the mood of the place. It was just incredible. So never underestimate your influence on your environment, guys and gals listening. So I just wanted to throw that at you real quick.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the influence on yourself. There's a big difference on how you feel if you're sitting there stoic and with a scowl on your face versus how you feel if you smile. Yeah. And and there's a lot of science behind changing your mood by changing your physiology. And
absolutely.
And just forcing a smile, because your body, you can trick your mind and body into thinking things are much better than they actually are.
Yeah, and this is basically fake it till you make it kind of mentality, and it applies in some certain circumstances. And I don't know about you, but I know me, the two things that I really worked on was eye contact and posture. Sitting upright. If you notice the confident pose in men is shoulders back, chest out, head up, and make eye contact with people, smile. And if you do those things, I guarantee that you'll see people want to do one of two things. They'll either break that connection where your eye meets theirs, they'll break and look down and look away, or more often, they'll smile back. And I've taken it a step further, just to say hi to everybody, because, well, that's just kind of who I am. And it's amazing. Even when I'm feeling terrible, I'll fake it for a couple moments, and the next thing you know, I'm genuine. I'm in it. So take recognition of how you personally show up in your everyday moments, Rad Dads. Walk with a confident stride, with a confident pose, and you will affect your entire environment.
Yeah, I could not have said it better myself.
Thank you. Okay, so we went over a best dad superpower. What is your worst, and how do you mitigate it?
I think for a big chunk of my earlier, when the kids were younger, is anger. How do I mitigate that? I learned a lot about anger, what triggered it in me, how to, take time out, how to use breathing, how to put things in perspective. So I would definitely say that getting angry and frustrated was my non-superpower, but I'm really happy with what I've learned and how I've been able to mitigate it.
I like this. I like where this is going, and I want to ask you a follow-up question here with regards to anger, because it doesn't just come from anywhere. So did you find the root cause of your anger?
Yeah, anger or depression in men a lot of times is manifested in anger. So it was really when I realized that I may have some amount of depression, which runs in my family. So, that was the root cause. And, by treating it as a disease, I was able to get some techniques through anger management and even go on a low dose of a antidepressant that really, really changed things for me, and continue to change things for me with respect to handling that. So yeah, I did come up with the root cause.
And I think it's important to find that, because again, if we're putting Band-Aids on an open chest wound, it's really not going to do the job. So I real quickly, do you have any resources, maybe a blog post, or something of that nature, maybe something that you've created to deal with anger? Do you have anything, a succinct resource for us?
No, what I go to is breathing, and there's a number. As a matter of fact, I just emailed one of my clients some breathing techniques. You're familiar with the box breathing from the book by Mark Divine. I don't have anything I go to. I did do a talk about my depression and anger and my son's depression, and you can find that on my website. That discusses some of this, but I think it's the recognition that again, having some self-love and recognizing that we all get frustrated and whatever, but that if you have the awareness around that your anger is not okay, really calling a spade and maybe going to see someone and really delving into, what you brought up is what's at the core of all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Find the root cause, people, because, if we cut the top off the weed, the roots are still there. It'll come right back. Just because you don't see it, that's not the solve the problem.
Men sometimes we hear the term depression and all that or therapy or going to see someone, and we, some of us get so worked up about that's weakness and
guilty.
It's, it's as strong as you're ever going to be. There's nothing stronger than admitting a place where, and depression's a disease. I mean, I don't think any of us, some of us, it's, we have heart disease or whatever. It's no different. Why? I'm not sure why it's so difficult for us to understand that something could be wrong with your brain, but if it's with your heart, that's fine. You go get it treated. I don't get that mentality. But the bravest thing you're ever going to do is to face what you need to face to make you a better man. And so I don't see any weakness at all in recognizing that, hey, maybe something is going on with my brain that is causing me to not be the person that I want to be. That takes some courage, and it also is going to make you a much better person in the long run.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. And I think these are all concepts to the Mark Divine book you alluded to earlier, Unbeatable Mind. And we'll have a link to that, obviously, in the show notes as well at www.weraddads.com/Paul Gilbride. All right, Paul, I'm going to finish with one final question, and it's a question I like to end on in dreaming. I like to be able to have a major goal in the future, and that question for you is, what is a bucket list item for yourself, your children, yourself and your children, and or your family?
Wow. A bucket list item.
Yeah, go big. Be specific. Let's make this a SMART type thing, all right?
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't understand, SMART is a specific, measurable, actionable, what's the R? Realistic, and time sensitive.
Yeah. I'll break this down between both my kids. With my son, definitely because of his journey he's on. He's 18 now, and I told you he had struggle with depression and everything, and because of what I do and what he's been through, I would like to see within the next 5 years him and I actually collaborate to help families who are going through the same thing, where they have a child or children who are suffering from depression, and him and I being able to collaborate to help those families from the parents' perspective and the kids' perspective. That's a big bucket list item of mine.
Awesome.
With my daughter, I would love to see her. She's always wanted to go to NYU, to college. I'm not sure why. It's been a dream of hers. I would like to make sure I do whatever I can to make that happen, and that's a time frame that is 2 years out, because she's just starting her junior year. So, me personally, I've got some crazy bucket list items. Just recreationally, I would love to rent maybe even own a really kick-ass RV and travel to all the major college football games, like the Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State, and all those big games, the Notre Dame, USC. I'm a huge college football fan, so I've always wanted to just tour and go to some of the biggest, most traditional games, Army, Navy, in an RV, and just do it with that. It'd be great if I could do it with my family, if they would, my kids would actually humor me through that process. So I'm definitely going to do that in the next 10 years.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, that's a great one. And what a bonding experience too. I mean, time in a vehicle like that, traveling, connecting over experiences. And yet again, your life is a culmination of experiences. It's not the things you own. It's the experiences that you share with other people.
Absolutely. And that would be a long, fun experience. I would love to do that. And it would take a number of years to hit all those games. So
yeah, well, it's this here we're dreaming, and you got to have a goal. You got to get out there, guys, and set yourself a goal, something that you're going to look forward to and you're going to take action on. So, Paul, thank you very much for sharing that, sharing your insight, sharing your story, and telling us who and where you are today. How can we hook up with you, find out more, et cetera, support you? Tell us how to do that.
Yeah, I can be found. My website is www.trickledownhappiness.com. I also have a big presence on Facebook. Just search Trickle Down Happiness. That I use to really provide inspiring material, usually a couple times a week. It's gotten a great reception. It's just really good stuff to put you in a mindset of a lot of the things we talked about today. Those are the two ways you can contact me. You can always email me, and that is paul@trickledownhappiness.com. And again, what I do is life coaching, and a lot of it is around work-life integration and living the life that you want to live, and trying to have it all, and better ways to manage the stress of doing that, and really getting the most out of yourself. That's why I was put on this earth. That's what I do really, really well. And like I said, that's what I love to do, and why it's not a job for me. It's just what I was meant to do. So
absolutely. And you've showcased very clearly that you have the experiences and the tact and everything required to do that job well. And so congratulations on finding your passion and pursuing it.
Well, thank you, sir. I really, really, really appreciate the forum to be on your show and to be able to talk to your audience. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me, Paul. I know we're going to be in close contact, as we already are. And, I value and appreciate you as a friend as well. So thank you for how you've helped me also.
Oh, absolutely. And you've helped me in more ways than you know, Walter. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. The power of friendships and networks, Rad Dads. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Come and join us on the Facebook group. That's what I'm doing there. But for now, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next week, or maybe on a Facebook video. We'll see. Thanks a lot, Paul, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Walter.
Well, that's it for this episode of We Rad Dads. I sincerely thank you for joining us. Don't forget to look us up at www.weraddads.com. There you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter account. Got a question or comment? It may be featured. Email me, Walter, at weraddads.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining us. And remember, stay up, stay connected, and stay rad, dads.